So big chaos leaks tonight, and it looks like the Despoiler himself is getting more scary than ever. Let's talk through Abaddon the Despoiler's rules in the new Chaos Codex. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought we'd talk about some of the new Chaos leaks that are coming out. A few datasheets are starting to emerge from the new Chaos Space Marine Codex that have been posted quite widely on the internet now, and I thought we'd start by focusing on the rules for the War Master of the Black Legion himself, seeing how Abaddon is going to be stacking up in the new Codex. I'd argue that perhaps as Chaos Space Marine models go, Abaddon is perhaps one of the single best at the moment. He's only 220 points, and to be honest, in terms of the value that he brings, it's pretty excessive, giving 4 rerolls to hit for nearby Black Legion, being a massive melee powerhouse threat in himself, and also fairly hard to take out with a bunch of wounds and halving damage. Perhaps he's arguably one of the models that doesn't really need fixing, but it's certainly been feeling quite weird for a while now that he's basically the entire centre of attention within the Black Legion, and so much the main draw to build an army around that it's not even funny. In any case, the broad focus of the change seems to be that he costs a lot more points now, but also has increased abilities to reflect that, and it genuinely looks like he's going to be punching up toward the sort of level of Primarchs now. I don't think that Rabute Gilliman would really want to be meeting him in single combat. So let's talk over his datasheet, his stat line, war gear, and then buffing rules, and a quick calculation of just how much damage he can do. So first up, Abaddon the Despoiler is remaining a 300 points HQ choice for Black Legion, going up from 220 points in his previous version, so quite a big points bump really. It looks like to an extent you could field him with the vast majority of Chaos units out there. Some of his special rules that we'll get onto later do appear to let him basically work with other Chaos armies and not just Chaos Marines, and he's also got the Supreme Commander keyword. Statline wise, he's received a bunch of different buffs. He remains movement 6 and hitting on 2s, but his strength and toughness has been buffed to strength and toughness 6. He's got 9 wounds now, the same as Gilliman. A big 8 attacks with some very scary combat weapons indeed, leadership 11, and a save of 2+ alongside a 4+ invul. The strength and toughness thing alone is pretty big. Basically the warp does seem to be propelling him to proportions far beyond the state of a normal Chaos Marine. The extra wound certainly won't hurt, he'll still get character protection, and the +2 attacks is maybe a bit more like +1 attack most of the time, as he will be losing Hateful Assault in the new Codex. Still though, a pretty beefy stat line all around. Keywords wise, as I mentioned, he has Supreme Commander, meaning that he's really easy to field in detachments, as you can basically take him slot free. He's got the Chaos Lord keyword, the Terminator keyword, which might help for stratagems I suppose, Traitoris Astartes, which seems to be the keyword for the core Chaos Space Marine Codex. He's Black Legion, as you'd expect, and he's got the keyword for all the different Chaos Gods, so Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh and Nurgle, again which will probably be useful for accessing stratagems. His weapons both seem a little bit more interesting than before. When he's shooting, he's going to be fighting with the Talon of Horus, Assault 4, Strength 5, AP -1 and Damage 2, so fairly decent compared with the previous version. That one was just rapid fire too, so wouldn't be firing so many shots at long range, and only Strength 4. To be honest, for a Primarch class weapon, I can see why that needed a bit of a buff really. Should reliably put a little bit of damage on most targets, maybe could kill a Space Marine a turn or so. Then in melee, he's either got the choice between fighting with Dracnian or the Talon of Horus in melee, and rather interestingly, the roles have been reversed a bit. Previously, Dracnian was the lower strength option that got you more attacks, and the Talon of Horus was higher strength, so could often be a little bit better for punching through vehicles. Now, most of the time, he's going to want to be striking with Dracnian, which hits at strength +3, so strength 9, AP -4, and damage 3, and usually in the first round of combat as well, as we'll get onto, he'll usually be hitting with strength +1, so typically strength 10. 8 attacks at that profile is really quite meaty, and it does feel like the dark mirror of the Emperor's sword that Gilliman carries. That one's also damage 3, and it also has the rule where 6 to wound inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target. Having more attacks at the moment though, at the moment he's usually going to be out-punching the Primarch of the Ultramarines. Really quite scary stuff. It doesn't end there though, because if you happen to be against 1 wound infantry, then you'll likely be striking with the Talon of Horus instead. That one's just strength user, so usually strength 7 on the first round of combat, AP -4, damage 1, and he doubles his attacks to a pretty crazy 16. That means a lot of the time against toughness 3 infantry, he's going to be clearing through an entire squad in a single combat phase on average. Then finally we get into Abaddon's many special rules. First up, we start with a couple of generic ones on the datasheet, which I believe reference different sections of the Codex. We've got Let the Galaxy Burn that we've seen already. This one appears to be a generic Chaos rule, and I believe that this will be representing a bunch of the similar ones for Loyalists, things like Bolter Discipline, and then new Chaos doctrines like Wanton Slaughter and Massacre to give them extra hits on sixes in different phases. I suspect that this will also be the bit that gives you Armour of Contempt as well, if it is indeed within the Codex. Then we've got Warp Strike, which is an interestingly named rule, but I strongly suspect that this is perhaps representing a generic Chaos Space Marine teleport type rule. I'm going to guess that this is his rule for being in Terminator armour and being able to be teleported into battle if he needs to. Then we've got really quite a fun rule called the Mark of Chaos Ascendant, which is a 4-part rule, and I believe that this is representing all 4 of the new Marks of Chaos combined. We've already seen the +1 strength of the first round of melee one, that's been present on those new Khorne Berserker datasheets, and he has that for the Khorne part. It sounds like the Nurgle part is a -1 to wound roll, but it seems to only apply if you're either going to be wounding him on a 4+ or a 2+. Weirdly, it doesn't apply if you're wounding him on a 3. Really quite an awkwardly worded rule, this one. Basically, it shakes down to you're either going to be wounding this guy on a 3+ or a 5+, with no in between or getting better than that. The Tzeentch one magics away some damage. The first failed save each turn becomes damage 0, which is really quite a nice defensive buff, as once you've penetrated the -1 to wound thing, the 2+ armor save and 4+ invul, you've already negated quite a lot of barriers, so if that damage suddenly becomes 0, your opponent's usually going to be quite annoyed. And finally, Slaanesh seems to be similar to the demon type rule. It means that they fight first in combat. Very nice for ongoing combats that he happens to be involved in, and could be quite handy for not having to spend the command points to interrupt, even if your opponent's charging multiple things across the army. Overall, it's really quite a nice support package. Tzeentch and Nurgle will make him tougher, Slaanesh makes him a bit more likely to get the damage output off, and Khorne makes him a bit mightier when he hits the opponent. Then we've got a rule called Dark Destiny. He's basically getting the same thing as Necron Catan or, say, Ghazghkull Thraka. He can't lose more than 3 wounds in any one phase, so if you want to bring down the Despoiler, you're going to have to damage him multiple times. Say shoot him for 3 wounds in the shooting phase, smite some wounds off him in the psychic phase, and then charge him if you do want to put him down in one turn. Given the Nurgle and Tzeentch durability boost though, I think it's going to be very unreliable to actually do those 3 wounds to him, and he's going to be a right menace until you can focus massive amounts of fire on him. Then he's got a rule called the War Master. He must be the Warlord, and if he is the Warlord, he gains Agents of Chaos. The Agent of Chaos keyword was a new one that was in the Chaos Knights Codex, and it means that you could basically add them into any Chaos army without much penalty to army-wide special rules. Quite cool that he's basically the overall faction commander. He can join Death Guard and Thousand Sons if he'd like to. Then, last but not least, we get onto his buffing rules. As the Despoiler, he's got a 6-inch aura of +1 to charge, and reroll hit rolls of 1 for any Chaos Core units. Interestingly, that's not just Chaos Space Marine units. It looks like those reroll ones and the +1 to charge would work on things like, say, Death Guard Plague Marines or Thousand Sons Scarab Occult Terminators. I guess in general that's probably not going to be your first choice for buffing, but kind of cool that they can access, say, some buffs to charging out of Deep Strike if they wanted to. Finally, his Chapter Master sort of equivalent rerolls means that one Heretic Astartes unit within 6 inches can reroll hit rolls. I guess that's a little bit more tailored towards the actual Chaos Space Marines, and if they just happen to be Black Legion, they can also reroll the wound roll as well. Rerolling hits and wounds is really quite a big deal. Games Workshop don't let it go on very many models in the game, and it's just absolutely spectacular as a damage buff, putting that on something like a Chaos Contemptor Dreadnought with Volkites, or Havocs with chain cannons, or maybe a tooled up Terminator squad shooting then fighting. Any of that is going to give you absolutely crazy amounts of extra damage. Overall, he is looking like an HQ that's shaping up to be worth that 300 points. I'd say perhaps his melee damage output hasn't got crazily better, even though obviously it's very good, but he is looking massively more survivable than he was last time between all those defensive rules, and his buffs maybe are a little bit worse for Black Legion in general, but still giving one unit a crazy buff and then being able to access buffs on just about every other Chaos unit is really quite awesome. Overall, I'd have a hard time believing that he isn't going to be fairly strong in the new book. Finally, just out of curiosity, I thought we'd run the numbers on what sort of things he can kill in combat. This is assuming that he isn't in that Wanton Slaughter doctrine that would give him exploding 6s to hit, at least if rumours are to be believed. Generally, in the first round of combat, he's going to be killing something like 11 guardsmen, around about 9 Necron warriors before reanimation, with that big AP -4 making their saves not worth anything, around about 6 Space Marines, 15 wounds to a Toughness 7 vehicle, or 8 wounds to a hard target, something like Toughness 5 with a 5+ invul and -1 damage. For 300 points, maybe admittedly it's not absolutely apocalyptic damage, but there's rarely going to be a unit that he's going to be charging in against that isn't going to feel it hard. Bearing in mind he's probably going to be alongside something like some Black Legion Terminators or similar, so I'm sure he can take out the majority of a squad or a hard hitter, and they can follow up and deal with any stragglers. Overall, pretty exciting stuff. Good to see that he's still going to be powerful in the new Chaos Codex, though maybe on a point-for-point basis I'm not sure if he's going to be massively better than he was before, as he was already very good for the cost. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say though. Let me know what you make of the new datasheet and rules, and let me know if there's anything interesting that I've missed down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. Hopefully we'll have a few more Chaos videos out over the next 24 hours or so feel free to check back later if you'd like to see more. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.